Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you, Anna?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good.
Hey, it's hard to believe this is the third one, huh?
No, I know.
Wow.
Time has
Yeah.
flown.
So, if I remember, I'm supposed to be doing 20 minutes, right? 20 more or less, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. We're going to try our best today.
Yeah, I'm having to, I think I may go a few minutes over, but I'm going to try to move as quickly as I can. It's a lot of material.
Yes, I've tried to pare mine down as much as I could. And
Yeah, so if I go
um,
over a few minutes, it's okay. We'll figure it out at the end. Right.
yes,
Listen, good luck.
same to you.
And
And
I'm
are
gonna,
you going first?
yeah.
Yay!
Yeah, I'm going first, and I just sit back and listen to you guys, and I do enjoy your presentations quite a lot.
Good.
So, and then later on today, I want to talk to you about maybe, coming to my school at some point. I want to talk to you about it at some point. So,
Absolutely.
okay.
I would love to.
Hey, and don't forget, if you can, send me that information about the ashram that you talked to me about, because I told a
Oh,
friend of mine.
yeah.
So
You
send
know
that
what?
to me.
I'm going to do that right now.
Yeah, just email it to me. I
Let's
think so.
see. You know what? I'll send it from my laptop so I can send the
Yeah, no,
official
don't worry about it.
link.
She's about to come on, so don't worry about it. I think there are 6 participants already, so or 8. So we may, I don't know at this point whether they're connected. I'm not sure how that works yet. So.
Okay. Yep. 2 down, and this is the last one.
It's pretty interesting. I think it's gone really fast.
Yeah, it has.
From when we started talking about it, right, to now, just seems to have gone really fast.
Yep. And now we've got another class about to graduate
All right.
and start studying for this bar exam.
All right. So we're going to have a lot of participants, apparently. That's what Linda sent. Did you read that email? Yeah, so that's great. That's really good.
Yeah, and we've got some that have graduated a few years ago and haven't taken it yet. So that's always good too, to get them back in the mindset.
Right. I wish I would have had something like this when I was going to law school. I mean, it's so informative, right? So helpful. It's wonderful.
Yeah, yep. And thankfully, CLEO, well, served so many purposes for me when I went to law school because I wasn't expecting the lack of diversity in my law school. And so that kind of blindsided me a little bit. But just the insight that they gave us early on, just to know what was coming next, was so incredibly helpful.
Where did you go to CLEO?
You said when?
Where?
Charlotte Law here in North Carolina. Yep.
I have a friend of mine who went to CLEO. We went both to Rutgers, and his name is Stephen Brown, and he also went to CLEO. But I think you're a little younger than he is. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I did CLEO in 2007.
Oh, yeah. No, you're a lot younger. I don't know when he did it, but I know when we graduated. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to stay with them. I didn't do CLEO. I didn't even know about it. When I first started thinking about law school. So I don't know. I guess Chrissy should be coming on. She does introduce her. Yeah. Hey.
Hi.
Can
So
you
we have
hear
about
us?
6 people right now. So we'll just wait another minute or so to see if anyone else joins us. And then after that, we'll start at 11.
Okay. And you're going to introduce the 3 of us, or you going to introduce the program? You want each one of us to say a little bit about ourselves? Is that what we're doing this time?
So I'll just turn it over to you right away and give them an idea of the overview of what we're doing today.
So I was telling Tanea that I may have to go over like 22, 23 minutes. I think
That's
I
fine.
have. We practiced it like 3 times, and I don't want to rush through it too much. It's a lot of stuff.
No, I think that's totally fine.
Okay, great.
All right, so it's 11, so we're going to definitely start on time because we have a lot of material to go through. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. Just to give you an idea of what we're going to do is the first part, we're going to go over the bar really quickly and then some tips. Then we're going to talk about what your schedule should look like and what resources you have available to you through your school, your bar prep company, through CLEO, and then finish off kind of explaining, well, how do you balance all this, all the information we're giving you, the tips, all the resources, what's going to work best for you, and how do you kind of make sure that you keep your stress at a manageable level as we go into this bar prep season. I'm going to let each of our presenters introduce themselves first. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our first presenter, Professor Antero. Why don't you go ahead and share your screen and begin the first part of our webinar.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Anna Otero. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you. We are very excited because I know we have a very exciting and informative presentation for you. I am Anna Otero. I teach at Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston. I teach civil procedure and I teach evidence and a number of bar courses as well. And so what I'd like to do today is I want us to go ahead and begin the PowerPoint. Let me just find the PowerPoint here. Don't know where it is. See if I can find it. Give me a second because I'm trying to find it. Okay, just give me 1 second, guys, because I'm not able to find the PowerPoint, but I will in a minute.
If you go on the bottom, you might be able to.
Yeah, no, I'm doing that, but for some reason it's not, I've done it before, but it's not letting me do it.
The bottom, there's a PowerPoint icon. Maybe that'll work.
Yeah, so. Yeah, but that's not showing on the screen, is it?
There you go.
It is?
Okay.
Okay.
Just go ahead, go to slideshow and then go to slideshow on the top.
Yeah, so this bar is up here. Let me bring it down here. So slideshow.
Slideshow, there you go. And then
Okay.
there you go.
But I need to take this screen out, so I'll minimize it. Okay, let's begin. So the most important thing about that you should be thinking about as a 3L is having a really effective and strategic study plan. The reality is that preparing for the bar is probably, half of your goal here. Having a strategic plan, calendaring everything, and of course the other presenters will speak about that as well. My goal here today is to cover the overview of the bar and give you some really good tips and suggestions that you may be able to apply. So, for example, I want to just a brief discussion on the bar exam. Are all bar exams the same? 34 jurisdictions right now implement the uniform bar exam. The components of the bar exam may vary by state, but 34 are using what we now call the uniform bar exam. So in most jurisdictions, regardless of whether they implement the UBE or not, mostly the exams are going to be based on multiple choice questions, essays, and a performance test. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. The component of these different parts of the exam and tips and suggestions on how to approach each one of them. So does it matter where you're taking the bar exam? And the answer is definitely yes. It matters because in order to be well prepared, you really should know exactly what the bar exam of your jurisdiction offers. Does it have a state-specific portion? How is it scored? All of this will give you a really good footing as you go into exam prep. But let's talk about the bar exam. I'm going to jump right into the uniform bar exam, and I want to share with you that this exam is prepared by the National Conference of Bar Examiners. The National Conference has a really wonderful website that includes a lot of tips and descriptions of the exams. You may want to visit that website between now and exam time just to familiarize yourself with the resources available on that website. The UBE is administered in 2 days. The MBE is on Wednesday of the last day of February, or last Wednesday of February and July. And the MEE and the MPT is given on the Tuesday prior to that. Now, as I've told you before, some different jurisdictions have different exams. In Texas, for example, where I teach, we have not yet administered or implemented the UBE. So our bar exam is 3 days, but if you're in a jurisdiction that has a UBE, it will be 2 days. So the exam is composed of the MBE, the MEE, which is the multi-site essay, and the MPT, which is a multi-site performance test. The one good thing about the Uniform Bar Exam is that it has a portable score that can be used to apply for admissions in other UBE jurisdictions. So with that set up about the components of the bar exam, let me go right into the multi-state bar exam. You probably know a whole lot about this already because you either have an academic support program in your school or a bar course, but I want to review a little bit of it just to give it context to the discussion. Obviously, the MBE, as you know, is a 6-hour, 200-question exam. These are multiple choice questions, 100 in the morning, 100 in the afternoon, time sensitive. We'll talk about that later. 175 of these are scored, 25 are experimental questions, and it covers basically everything you've learned in your first year and first semester of your law school. Civil procedure, constitutional law, contracts, all of these courses that you are now very familiar with. On the UBE exam, this counts for 50% of your score. So I want to point you to the fact that the National Conference of Bar Examiners has very explicit subject matter outlines on all of these MBE subjects. What that means is this, that they provide a template of the most heavily tested areas of those topics. For example, if you look at the civil procedure subject matter outline, it tells you that 16 questions of the civil procedure exam are going to be based on categories 1, 3, and 5. These are categories that cover subject matter jurisdiction, personal jurisdiction, preliminary pleadings, amendments. If you notice, Rule 11 is listed on this outline, so you know they're going to test Rule 11, which is the sanctions rule. And then, of course, a lot of motions. If you look at the subject matter outline posted in the National Conference of Bar Examiners website for each topic, and you print that, you then have a lot of focus as you're studying in each of these topics, and you'll know ahead of the game which in fact is where the focus is in each one of these. So let me give you some ideas about the MBE, some good things to know. First of all, the substantive law of each subject matter tested is something that you absolutely need to get under your belt. Besides knowing the black letter law, practicing applying it to the facts is also a strategy. And of course, you get that strategy by practicing MBE questions and receiving proper feedback. It is not enough to memorize and understand the elements and rules of law without some pretty good idea on how the issues will be tested. So preparing for the MBE requires that you combine your knowledge of the theoretical with the practical. Basically, you have two goals: to acquire a detailed understanding of substantive law and to master the specific manner in which it is tested. Now, I say that because many of our students often believe that by practicing MBE questions, they're going to learn the law. It really doesn't work that way. You need to know the law, and then you begin to practice MBE questions to test your deficiencies in some areas of the topics, so you're able to then answer all the questions successfully. We'll talk more about that later. To better memorize the subjects, I would suggest that you create rule statements and that you create flashcards. That practice is going to allow you to be more proactive with the material. Instead of just reading, a 50-page outline over and over, extract from those outlines key points. When you take an exam and you've missed certain points, go back to the outline, create a flashcard on the points you missed, and that's how you really correct your strategy for taking MBE questions. The best approach to the actual multiple choice question is this: read the call of the question or STEM, and then read the fact pattern. I want to remind you that in the multi-state exam, the multiple choice questions will be mixed. So you're not going to come to a page that has all property questions. You'll come to a page, let's say, for example, you open your booklet. It's page number 1. You'll have topics such as torts, civil procedure, property, criminal law. And so by looking at the stem of the question, you can immediately identify what area it's being tested. I would read the facts carefully, find the issue in the facts, identify the rule that they're testing, reach a conclusion without looking at the answer choice, and then let the answer choices speak to you. Because there's always going to be 2 that you can eliminate. And the more you know about the rules, the better you can eliminate and the quicker that you will be able to do that, right? So let me give you some tips on what not to do. Don't make the mistake of sacrificing a careful reading for a quick one. You only have 1.8 minutes to read. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But because of time constraints, you want to train yourself to make a really good critical reading that first time around. You want to flag points in the question that are important. I'll show you that in a minute. And so you want to read very critically and very intelligently because you don't have a lot of time. Do not leave any questions unanswered. National Conference indicates in its website or on its website that there are points will not be subtracted for incorrect answers. So the point here is answer all the questions because they're only grading the answers that are correct. So do not leave any questions unanswered. Do not skip the explanations of correct answers when you're practicing these bar exams. So when you're sitting down to do 50 questions in, let's say, civil procedure, do not read the answers and the explanations of the questions you got correct, because sometimes you may get the answer correct for the wrong reason. And you always want to emphasize exactly what the point was being tested and whether or not you're pretty good at that point. Don't pick an answer just because, for example, it has a Latin phrase or a legal doctrine. You know, if you haven't seen it before, chances are that's not going to be the right answer. And also be careful not to fall for distractors. Distractors are designed to support logic that leads to one of the wrong alternatives. They're very good at drafting distractors, questions that look like the right answer, but are really not if you think about it carefully enough. So as you practice MB questions, be mindful of all of that. Don't fall for nonsense theories, such as the doctrine of changed circumstances. There are some doctrines that simply do not exist. And by the time you've done a lot of these practice exams, you should know that. All right, let's look at this practice question from civil procedure. I want to just point out how you could have flagged down some key important points. First of all, if you look at the call of the question first, was the action properly removed? You should immediately ascertain that this is a question in the area of civil procedure. It is an area testing a very interesting point of federal jurisdiction, which is removing a case from a state to a federal court if the federal court could have had original jurisdiction. These are all points that you should have known. So as you read the question, I've highlighted in red and blue the points that you should have been able to signal right away. A woman from state A filed an action against a retailer in a state B court in a state court in state B. That's important because you notice it's filed in a state court. And if you remember removal, the case will be removed from a state court to a federal court. The complaint alleges that the retailer had not delivered $100,000 worth of goods for which the woman had paid. 20 days after being served, the retailer, which is incorporated in state C and has its principal place of business in state B, filed a notice of removal in a federal district court in state B. Notice that the second paragraph includes a timeline. Whenever a bar exam includes timelines, particularly in the area of civil procedure where we have many, many timelines, they are testing your knowledge of a specific timeline. So if you look at the choices, no, because the notice of removal was not timely filed. Well, if you know what the timeline is to file a notice of removal, you should be able to eliminate that immediately. They're telling you it was filed 20 days. So you need to know whether that is within the period of time prescribed by the rule. No, because the retailer is a citizen of state B. That's an interesting point. At this point, you may not really know whether that is the answer or not. The next 2 points, C and D, are statements which are in fact accurate. But the question is there anything about removal that would make C and D incorrect choices? So C says yes, because the parties are citizens of different states and more than 75,000 is in controversy. Well, clearly that's true. You have plaintiff from A and defendant from C and B, and so is D also correct. The point here, if you had rule statements, and let's look at them very quickly. The point here is that the reason the case is not removable is because of point number 3. So if you look at point number 1, a defendant may remove a case from a state court to a federal court by filing a notice of removal within 30 days, then you know that the first choice could have been eliminated, right? Because it is timely filed. You file it within 20 days. The second point is an accurate statement. That's not an issue. But the third point is the point that would have given the choice away. In diversity cases, the defendant cannot remove the case to a federal court if the case is filed in the state where it resides. That's called the home state advantage. And of course, it is filed in state B. the defendant is a citizen of state B as well as a citizen of state C, and of course the choice here would be letter B. So what I'm trying to show you is that by having all of these rule statements, which you can basically prepare for diversity, federal question, removal, supplemental jurisdiction, civil procedure lends itself to a lot of these rule statements, you will be able to then answer the questions very effectively and accurately and quickly. Okay, so here's the timelines that you need to know about. You have 100 questions in 3 hours. So that means that you have 180 minutes, which turns out to be 1.8 minutes per question. The question we just reviewed is a question that has a very brief fact pattern, but not all questions do. And so if you have a fact pattern that is very lengthy, that's how you're going to be able to even out the timeline, right? Because some are not going to take you 1.8 minutes, but others will. So practice under exam conditions. If you are going to take an exam, a 100 question exam somewhere, towards the end of the study period before the exam, make sure you always do it under exam conditions, because you want to make sure that you are managing your time carefully and that you're pacing yourself. So let's look now to the multi-state essay exam. You're going to have under the UBE, 6 exams, 30 minutes. Notice in the areas covered, you have topics more than just your first year topics. They have business associations, corporations, a number of topics that are all fair game for the multi-state essay exam. This exam is 30% of the score for the UBE. So also on the National Conference of Bar Examiners, they do have the scope of coverage for each of these topics. Again, I would print those and incorporate them into my binder of bar materials so that you have as much information as you possibly can by seeing what's being focused on the part of the examiners, and you also know what areas you have to focus on. So I think that should be one thing that you do before you start your major studying for all of these sections. In terms of approaching the multi-state essay exam, critical reading and organizing your response, obviously 2 important aspects of approaching the question. The call of the question is your guide. Read the call of the question first. Gauge what topics it's asking you to address. Again, these exams are not in order. You're going to have questions from diverse topics all in one test. Look at the facts carefully, underline, highlight, note the issues as you spot the issues as you read them. And then employ a method of formatting the essays that applies to all of your essay questions. Always use headings and subheadings whenever applicable. Most of these exams, you generally have 2 or 3 subparts. So each of those subparts should be individually answered, and within each of those subparts, you're going to have, of course, to use the same IRAC method. Write intelligibly, make sure you have full sentences, separate your paragraphs, just make it easy for the reader to understand what your answer is. The IRAC method is something, of course, you have fine-tuned in law school. You always want to state the statement of the issue that is being tested. You want to begin by outlining the rule. Some points about outlining the rule: use the rules in the order that the examiner tells you to do. Use the rules in the order that the transaction occurred. If there's an exception, begin with the general rule and then offer the exception. If there's a defense, first address the cause of action, and then, of course, apply the facts to determine the outcome and have a brief conclusion. Some points about that: keep your conclusion short and concise. Explain how the issue relates to the call of the question. In other words, sort of bring it back to what was initially asked and make sure that the conclusion makes sense in light of what you have written. Transition by briefly stating how the issue relates to the issues that you will discuss, and allow enough time to read over your answer. You want to make sure that you don't have any spelling or grammar or punctuation issues. Presumably the examiners do not take points off of that. It's what I've heard them say in a variety of seminars that I have attended, but it's not a great impression to begin an essay question with lots of typos. So be careful about that. What not to do: don't forget that this is a time-sensitive exam. Allocate your time wisely. Again, practice under exam conditions. You have 30 minutes. You have 30 minutes for each question, so that's basically about 5 to 6 minutes to read and create a very quick outline, and then 25 minutes to write. Don't spend too much time outlining. They're not going to grade the outline, so you want to make sure that you organize your thoughts so that you can begin writing effectively and cohesively, but you obviously don't have 20 minutes to do all of that. Don't state everything you know about the topic. You have 30 minutes. Whatever it's necessary to address the issue on the call of the question is where your focus should be. and avoid repeating facts. Do not repeat facts because generally that happens when your answer is a bit fragmented and not as organized as it should be. All right, those are the tips and suggestions for the first two sections of the exam, the multi-state bar exam, the multiple choice, and the essay exams. And then I want to talk to you about the MPT, which is the multi-state performance test. The Uniform Bar Exam offers two 90-minute MPTs. This is not a test of substantive knowledge. In fact, the bar examiners clearly state that it is designed to evaluate fundamental lawyering skills. These are skills that you should have at the very beginning of your practice, and the ability to complete a task. That is an important point, so I will remind you that if you were to get to the end of your exam and you have not explored every issue that you think should have been explored, do not put a sad face, do not say I couldn't finish, don't alert the examiner to that. Simply put in conclusion and do the best you can in making an intelligent conclusion of the problem. The MPT counts as 20% of your grade. These are the skills tested by the MPT: problem solving, legal analysis, factual analysis, communication, organization, and management of legal tasks. And what you will notice is that these are skills that you have learned in your 3 years of law school. You have learned and fine-tuned them and honed these skills. And so basically the MPT is a closed universe exam. You do not need to memorize any law. You need to come into the exam as a new lawyer would to resolve a problem. There are a variety of documents tested. It could be a memorandum of law, which is the one most commonly tested. But it also could be a persuasive brief or an appellate brief or a trial brief or a client letter. So make sure that when you're practicing MPTs, you practice all these various documents so there's no surprise the day of the bar. I will also tell you that if they give you something that you may not have seen before, like a closing argument, don't panic. They give you a SAM or an instruction memo telling you what you should do in terms of that closing argument. So they really walk you through everything you need to do. Why is it a data and time management exam? Because you get a packet of 18 to 20 pages of material, and you basically have only 20 minutes to read through the material and compose a written work product. So time allocation does matter. It should be divided in 45 minutes to read and 45 minutes to write. You have to really practice using that format because you don't want to read for a bit more than 45 minutes and then find that you simply don't have enough time to produce the work product. The best approach to the MPT is that you read the general instructions, which are included with every MPT. It should be about 30 seconds. These general instructions are posted on the National Conference of Bar Examiners website. I would download that, read that, and once you know what those are, the day of the exam, you just glance for 1 second and you know you can begin because you already read them. The task memo, however, is going to be new for every assignment, about 2 minutes to read, and then 15 or 20 minutes for each file and the library, then maybe 3 or 4 minutes, 5 maximum to do an outline, and then you've got to begin writing. But you have to really practice under exam conditions until you get to a point that you're really comfortable. This is an example of a recent MPT that I offered in my class. You notice the file contains 6 documents, the library contains 4 documents, a set of statutes in the first document, a number of cases. So you can see that it is voluminous amount of material to manage in 1 hour, or in 45 minutes, I should say, before you start writing. So here's some tips about reading the task memo. I believe that the task memo is the most important memo in that particular file, in that particular test. And the reason for that is because it gives you, it's really the fictional supervisor directing you to do a task, and you're going to be graded on that task. It tells you what to do, it tells you what not to do, be mindful of that, and then it has a number of important functions. It introduces you to the parties, it describes the client's problem, it instructs you to produce a document that addresses the problem, and it sets forth formatting instructions. It is a roadmap on how to approach writing the actual work product. And it also tests your ability to follow directions. So it's very important to pay attention to that task memo. The best approach to the MPT are the following. So number 1, I would suggest that after you read the task memo, you review the file in the library. By that I mean just peruse it to see how many documents in each of those sections so that you can assess how much time to give to the library and how much to give to the file. Sometimes one is larger than the other. I would also suggest that you read cases in chronological order. So even if they're not presented in that form or in the packet, I would pick the most recent case, read that first, and then read the others. Because probably the most recent case will include language from the other cases that are also included in the file, and that will help you as you're reading those other two cases. Remember that every case that appears in the library, even if it is familiar to you, may have changes. The examiners do that on purpose. They add significant changes. So don't say to yourself, oh my God, I know this case, international shoe, I'm not going to read it because I know that case by heart. Number 4, binding versus persuasive. Every MPT is set in the fictitious state of Franklin. So if in your library you have a case from Columbia or Olympia, these are not mandatory. And the examiners expect you to analyze that, spot that, and to make a comment about that. And then finally, you have to make sure that you integrate the legal principles from the statutes and the cases. If you do not integrate the legal principles from both the statutes and the cases, your analysis is going to be weak. Practice MPT under exam conditions, 90 minutes, 45 to read, 45 to write. Practice MPT that offer a variety of work products. Organize your paper, make sure to have an outline, and whatever you do, this is important, almost every MPT requires headings and subheadings. So make sure that when you draw, you read a case, if it says the following are the factors, each one of those factors will become a heading in that discussion. Do not brief the cases that you're given. You are expected to draw the law, to extract the rule of law, but not just to state it. You have to draw the rule of law and state how it applies to the case, but they don't expect you to provide a page and a half of each facts of the cases that are cited in, or that are provided in the library. Do not include blue book citations, abbreviations will do, and do not reference materials that are not included in the library. That's important. Don't just practice, self-assess. There are point sheets for all of these exams. There are answers that your commercial bar review courses will offer. Make sure that you self-assess. All of this is really important. These are the most common problems that I have observed in grading the MPT, and they're also the problems that are listed in Texas when an examinee does not do well in an MPT. This is what they get, a sheet that has all these points, and then they check off the ones. Time management is the first problem, so practice is paramount. Failure to follow instructions. Read carefully, know what they tell you not to do and what they tell you to do, and follow those instructions. I'll highlight 2 more for lack of time. Failure to establish a legal framework. This is a paper that does not even talk about the cases or the statutes. That's a very weak analysis. Failure to identify legal issues, or lacking organization and clarity, and omitting key aspects of the discussion. This is the sort of rubric that the examiners look at in grading these papers. So be mindful of that as you do the MPTs to make sure you don't fall into those traps. Okay, one last thing. By this time, you're probably taking the MPRE. I just want to alert you that if you have not taken the MPRE, please remember that courses like Quimby have all sorts of free MPRE materials that you can access to take that exam. Finally, just 2 more things. These are the jurisdictions where the where the UBE is offered. So if you are sitting in one of these states, you have the exam that is a UBE. If you're not sitting on a UBE state, they implement portions of the national conference exam. They all implement the multi-state bar exam and MPT for the most part, but they may have essays that are state specific. So please make that assessment. These are the states that do not have the UBE. As you can see, Texas is moving towards 2021. So if you're in one of these states for the July 2019 bar, then please make sure that you know exactly what your bar exam is about. Focus, study hard, and I wish you lots of luck, and I'll be here. I'll stay behind to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much for the first part. Hopefully you all got a lot of great tips. If you had questions about whether we were going to release the slides, because there was a lot of great information in that presentation, please know that we will send a link with the video that has the slides on it as well. So you can always go back in your own time to review whatever information you feel you want a refresher on. In terms of questions, we're going to hold the questions until the end. There's a little Q&A chat box where you can submit your questions. You're always welcome to submit it during the presentation, and we will answer them as we can. If not, we'll answer all the questions at the end live, where all the panelists can kind of chime in to give their advice or answer whatever question you had specifically about their presentation. Do I have any questions now before we move on to the next portion? Since we have no open questions, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next portion of the presentation. So let me just share my screen. Okay. Alrighty, 1 second. All right. So I'm going to go ahead today and talk a little bit more about, well, what do you do with all these resources? So my name is Christina Chong. I work in the Academics and Bar Support program at the University of California, Irvine, and I've been doing this for more than 5 years. So this isn't my first rodeo. What I'm going to talk about today are 3 things. One, what are the resources available to you this summer? So Professor Antero gave a lot of great tips in terms of things that you should know about each part of the bar exam and how to improve these skills. So we want to really go through some of the resources that can help you do this. Then we're also going to talk about, well, how do you make the most of these resources? Because there are tons of resources out there. And one of the things I see with a lot of students is information overload. There's too many resources and too many things going on where at a certain point, it becomes counterproductive to do everything, where you need to really think through what works for you. And then finally, briefly go over what your summer bar prep schedule will probably look like. So let's go ahead and start with the beginning, which is what resources are available to you. So the resources available to you, there's a lot. The first thing that you probably already know or have signed up for are your bar prep companies. That's Barbary, Kaplan, Themis. There's a bunch of other ones, especially if you're on the East Coast or in the Midwest. There's Bar Max or the Mariano Bar Review, but West Coast tends to do more Barbary, Kaplan, and Themis. And then we also have Quimby that has a bar prep course as well. And so CLEO has managed to negotiate with Quimby, for those of you who have not selected a bar prep company, a price of $360 for their bar prep program, where the original price was $1,500. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely let us know. If you've already picked your bar prep company, then don't worry about it. Just go with the company that you think works best for you. So that's one resource you have. The other resource that a lot of you probably heard about, if not from us, maybe from your school, is Adapt-A-Bar. And so Adapt-A-Bar, we'll talk more about it in detail in a little bit, but the gist of how much it costs is CLEO has also negotiated for students to get Adapt-A-Bar for $50 when the original price is $395. And this is a program that we also offer at UC Irvine, and I find it to be very helpful for students, and I'll explain why in the following slides. The other resource that you have is a new program that CLEO is implementing this year, and it's free to you, and it's pretty much a bar mentoring program. And I'll explain what actually happens in the bar mentoring program again later as we go through each of these resources. But in order to qualify to get a bar mentor who will kind of do weekly check-ins with you, you have to apply to CLEO's bar prep program and complete a questionnaire and send it to me, which was sent to you via email. And I'll give you the links towards the end of the presentation. The other resources that you've probably heard about are also the study aids from the NCBE's website, or even all the past essays or PT exams that are released on your bar website. The states tend to release questions for you to practice as well that are external resources in addition to Adapt-A-Bar or Barbary's program or Themis's program. Those are not free unless your state gives it to you for free. The NCBE, which is the company that writes the multiple choice questions, charges $50 for some of these study aids. And then finally, you probably know about your law school's bar prep class or ASP program. This is technically free, but not really, because it's included in your tuition, because the people who run these programs are paid through, the law school. And so this is a program that I really want to start talking about first, because if you're not taking advantage of this, this is where I think they can really help you navigate even more specifically and give you individual feedback on what would be best for you in terms of this summer. And so let's go ahead and just break that down first. And then, of course, we'll come back to some of the other things like Adaptive Bar and the mentoring program, et cetera. But what is academic support? Academic support is a free program at your school that provides academic assistance to all law students, right? It's usually run by a faculty member, a staff member, or even students. And they usually give you one-on-one appointments. They give you hypos to practice. And during the bar prep season, you tend to get a lot of written feedback, which you don't always get from your bar prep company. So for example, Barbary reviews 3 or 4 essays versus your school's bar prep program might review 10 essays. We review 8 essays and 2 PTs at my school in addition to the bar prep company's program. And we offer one-on-one appointments throughout the whole summer. So if you're not taking advantage of your academic support program, you definitely want to look into what they offer you. And if you don't even know who they are, it's likely you saw them at orientation, or they're those people that keep doing workshops or have classes like bar prep classes or legal analysis. Those are your academic support people. It's usually going to be 1 to 5 people in the department. It just depends on how big your school is. And of course, they offer the bar support as well as the help through law school. So you can even use them now in your 3L year. But what you're really interested in is the bar support. And just know that they might also be referred to as ASP. The S tends to stand for skills, support, or success. It just depends on what school you go to. And so in terms of bar support, that's really what you want to ask them to do. And so I would encourage all of you, after you get off this webinar, to contact your academic skills program. And basically, you're going to either search your school's website for the contact information, then email the director, assistant director, professor, student fellow, whoever is in charge of the program. Or if you can't find their email, ask your student services department. They'll be able to refer you to ASP, or ask your professors, or even upperclassmen. And what I want you to do is to set up an individual appointment with your ASP program to create a bar preparation plan. They know what you've been doing for the past 3 years, so they're going to be able to customize a plan that will help you get through this summer. And they can also talk to you about all the resources I'm about to talk to you about in detail. So that's one of the action steps I really want you to take after you get off of this webinar that I think will help you a lot. And that's one of the resources I think you should take advantage of. The other resource that a lot of people are taking advantage of now is Adaptive Bar. And if you don't know what Adaptive Bar is an online MBE practice program with answer explanations for each practice question. So it's tons of multiple choice questions with answer explanations to help you understand why you got the question right or why you got the question wrong. The database contains over 2,000 practice MBE questions, and 610 questions were actually published by the NCBE, which are the people who actually write the bar exam. So a lot of students like Adaptive Bar because you're practicing actual questions that were written by the people writing your bar examination. The great thing about this program is it also allows you to practice by topic or subtopic. So if you want to practice negligence or you want to practice defamation, you can practice those specific topics instead of just practicing torts in general. It sorts it for you. And it also lets you set your own time limit. So you can say, oh, I want to do this in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and I only want to do 10 questions, or I want to do 50 questions. So you can really customize it to your liking. It also tracks your progress by subject, so you can see, well, out of the 100 questions I've done in Civ Pro, I've only done 30% correct or 60% correct. And that lets you see, well, which subjects should I be practicing more, and then go ahead and focus in on doing more questions in that subject area. The other nice thing that Adaptive Bar does is through its algorithm, it cycles back in questions in topics or subtopics where you're performing weaker. So if you just do a mix set of any subject and just give me 10 questions, it will give you more Civ Pro questions if you've been doing worse on Civ Pro, and give you less contracts questions if you've been doing better on contracts. And so this is something where you don't have to do the extra admin work. The program just does it automatically for you. And so this is the program where you can get access to all of this for $50 as long as you're in the CLEO program. But one of the most common questions that I get from all students who hear about Adaptive Bar and then also have a bar prep company is, well, what questions are better? And should I practice on computer versus hard copy? So Adaptive Bar is all online. There are no hard copies. And versus a lot of the bar prep companies are still printing some of the MBE questions in hard copy so you can practice marking and really getting into the paper, because your exam's a paper exam. It hasn't moved to the computer yet. And so my response to that is, well, neither one is really better. It's how you review them and how you do the questions. Some people like Adaptive Bar more because psychologically they feel that they're getting more value out of the actual questions because it's released. But it's also released for a reason, which means they don't use it anymore. The drafting style of Adaptive Bar questions that are release questions versus Barbary, of course they're different. Drafters are all different. But then you are able to actually see release questions versus Barbary, you can do it hard copy. The main gist is you really just need to make sure that you do the questions properly, understand the law, like Professor Ontero said, and make sure you figure out what you did right or wrong. Now, the next question I get is it possible to do all the Adaptive Bar and Bar Prep Company questions? The answer is no, it's not. You can't do all 2,000 Adaptive Bar questions and all the questions given to you by your Bar Prep Company. You will burn out. So what I usually advise people to do is if you have a Bar Prep Company and you're doing Adaptive Bar, every time your Bar Prep Company gives you assigned questions in the schedule, you substitute it with some Adaptive Bar questions. So you're still getting the practice, you're just doing it from a different source. If you try to do everything, it'll really stress you out. And this is something you can talk to your academic support program in terms of what they think is the best method for you, because they might actually have a deal with your Bar Prep Company or a special deal with Adaptive Bar with a customized program. And then if they have a customized program, then you should really follow their advice versus my generic advice of just substituting Adaptive Bar questions for the Bar Prep Company questions. The next question I get is, when should I start Adaptive Bar if I've signed up for it? Honestly, I usually tell people starting in April is a good time. So we're getting there. If you sign up for Adaptive Bar, to start getting your feet wet, start doing the questions to do review. So if you want to do Adaptive Bar, next month is when I would say you should start doing questions. The other question is, should I participate in my Bar Prep Company's early Bar Prep program? The answer is yes. If they have one, you should start reviewing the materials now so that you can get familiar with the content and really understand some of the weaks and strengths and weaknesses that you have. But your school will probably also have a Bar Prep program. So people will ask me, well, should I also participate in my school's Bar Prep program where they have, I don't know, extra questions that you turn in for feedback and extra simulations that I should be doing in the spring? And my answer to that is also yes. So before the summer, I think if you can do as much pre-prep as you can for all the programs available to you, you should definitely participate in them and get as much feedback as possible. But whether you should do additional self-study or not, that is a very personal question, because it depends on what classes you're taking, whether you're doing Adaptive Bar, if your school has an early Bar Prep program. If you're not doing Adaptive Bar, you don't do the Bar Prep Company's early Bar Prep program, and you're not participating in your ASP's Bar Prep program, then the answer is yes, you should do self-study. But if you're already doing all those resources, it's unlikely that you'll need to do additional self-study because you're already overloading your schedule. But if you do decide to do self-study, the resources you'll be looking at are those study aids or your state bar's website practice questions. Okay. And again, this is something that I definitely think you should talk to your ASP program about to break down the schedule for you. And what we're offering as CLEO is we're offering a bar mentoring program. And so this is something that doesn't really start until the summer. But if you're already feeling overwhelmed with all the resources and things that you have to do and things you need to learn, this program is great, because it's going to give you weekly check-ins with the mentor. And the mentor is going to be able to give you some guidance on your study schedule and what goals you should be making or how you should be performing, especially if you're doing Adaptive Bar, early Bar Prep, your school's Bar Prep program, your actual Bar Prep program. There's just a lot going on. And then more importantly, they give you the emotional support you need, right? And so the next question I get about this is, well, what if my school has an actual Bar Prep program and now we have CLEO's mentoring program as well? Can I do both? The answer is yes, of course you can do both. The question is more, should you do both? You're going to be overwhelmed already in the summer. Adding one more check-in to your plate is a very personal decision. For me, for example, if I have too many people talking to me, I get overwhelmed with too much advice. Versus some people like getting different advice from different people because it helps them have an outlet. So you have to decide what's better for you. And how do you do that? That's just talking to your ASP program, talking to us, figuring out what's being offered at your school and trying to see, well, what works best for my schedule and my ability and, my personality. If you do decide that you want to do CLEO's Bar Mentoring Program, as I said earlier, the way to join is to, one, apply to CLEO's Bar Prep Program, and the link is right here, so you can just click on it later, and we sent an email with the information. And then complete a questionnaire that I sent via email that I will send again either tomorrow or Monday for you to email to me with some information that I need to know about where you're taking the bar, what, resources you have so we can match you with the best person. And all this is due on March 31st, Sunday, so tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So if you don't have a bar prep program at your school, I definitely think you should participate in CLEO's mentoring program, but if you have both, definitely talk to us about it a little bit more. And then finally, our last resource that we have for you is a CLEO bar stipend. And so what we're doing this year is CLEO is offering bar stipends to students with financial need if the student completes the following requirements. And the requirements are, one, participate in CLEO's bar prep program. We gave the link on the previous slide. Participate in the Adapt-A-Bar program, which means you're having to do those questions regularly and do a substantial amount of questions and review them properly. And then participate in CLEO's Bar Mentoring Program, which is doing the check-ins. These stipends and Adapt-A-Bar discounts, the $50 discounts, are for students taking the bar for the first time and alumni who have not passed the bar examination. So if you're an alumni on the webinar right now who's already passed the bar in one jurisdiction and just wants to take the bar in another jurisdiction, the stipend and Adapt-A-Bar wouldn't apply to you, but it would apply to students taking it for the first time. So these are all the resources that we have available to you. A lot of people say, wow, there are so many things on my list. I have to do all the tips that Professor Antero talked about. I have to join all these programs. How am I going to fit this into my schedule? What does my summer schedule look like? Should it look like really full? How many hours am I going to spend? What does it look like? And the answer is it depends, which is not the answer you want to hear, but it's the truth. But in general, the generic schedule will look like, in the morning, you watch videos from your bar prep company. It's reviewing the substance. It's about 4 hours per day in the morning. Then you're also going to watch videos about approaches, how to approach the MBE, how to approach the essays, how to approach the PTs, kind of what Professor Antero gave you this morning, but then they're going to be spread out a little bit more rather than in one webinar. And then you're going to review videos of, practice MBEs or essays or PT questions that you had done that day or the previous day. The next thing you're going to have each day is lots of practice. In the afternoon, you're going to have lots of assignments given to you by your bar prep company, or you're going to be doing Adapt-A-Bar questions. This is the practice where you're going to apply the substance you learned. And then finally, you're probably going to be doing a lot of reviewing commercial outlines or creating your own materials like issue lists, attack plans, flashcards, whatever you need to memorize that black letter law and really, learn how to apply the law to pass the exam. And then throughout the day or the week, you're also going to participate in your law school program or CLEO programs. That's usually what the whole summer looks like. But you have to remember you're not going to school anymore. It's just bar prep. And so what it looks like is the average workload for a student is about 8 to 10 hours per day, every day during the bar prep season, right? And so you're probably like, wow, this is a lot. And it's true because preparing for the bar is actually more than a full-time job. It takes more time, and a lot of times people work 6 to 7 days a week constantly, versus sometimes they might take a day off. And so a lot of people are like, well, how do I survive this? How do I get through all this and manage all of that? And that's why we have the mentoring program, and then I'm going to turn it over, to Ms. McDonald to kind of go through now some techniques that you can use to survive this very stressful time. Let's go ahead and I'll stop sharing my screen. And again, if you have questions, we'll go ahead and take those questions at the end, but I want to make sure that we can get through all the material. So I'm going to stop share and then let her go ahead and take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. This is, let's see, did we get this right? May not have. Okay, we'll get through this. I'm Tanae McDonald. I am a practicing attorney here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am also a guest lecturer at law schools where law schools bring me in to do exactly this, help get students mentally and emotionally prepared for a bar study. I'm a former law school professor and I'm a yogi. And so once I get to my first slide, you'll see my picture of me standing on the beach at one of my favorite places in the world. So you have been given a lot of information. There I am. And so we want to put it into perspective so that you can put it to good use starting today. First and foremost, and probably most importantly for this group, is that I am a CLEO alum. And I always like to tell this short story about what CLEO did for me. When I went to law school, I was blindsided by the fact that there was very little diversity in my law school. I didn't expect that. And so CLEO served as my source of connecting with other students around the country who were similarly situated. And those are some of my closest friends now as a practicing attorney, were those young people that I met in CLEO some years ago. So when I lecture to CLEO, and I've done this a couple times now, this is the type of group that I have in my mind, and this is who I'm talking to. Each and every one of you under the sound of my voice, I hope that you get something that you will start to implement today. All right, so let's get started. I call this presentation Getting Your Ducks in a Row, and this is perfect timing because most bar review courses start May 28th. So what we're going to do right now is work through some strategies that I'd like you to implement that will help get you in the best possible position mentally, emotionally, physically, and even financially so that you can pass this darn exam the first time. So what I want you to do first is to take a deep breath. And then, so we're going to inhale, and the easiest one is inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 2 seconds, and push the air out slowly and exhale for 8 seconds. There are tons of breathing techniques on the internet. I ask you to look them up and employ one as you study because deep breathing is one of the best ways to reduce stress. When you breathe, you send a message to your brain to calm down and relax. And actually, deep breathing brings your awareness from the worries in your head. And so you're about to enter one of the most stressful periods of your life. And so this is an easy, free way to reduce stress and be able to stay focused. So practice your breathing techniques often during your study. And then when you start the bar exam on actual game day, start with a good deep breathing technique. So when we look at law school, the key to law school is knowing thy professor. You sit in class, your professor tells you something, and the exam is your opportunity to regurgitate what your professor said. It's very different in bar study. The key to bar study success is knowing thyself. And so we're going to pause here for a minute because this is step one. What I'd like you to do this weekend is to schedule some alone time and ask yourself some key questions. And the key here is that you need to be as honest as you can because this will be the foundation of what you're going into bar study with. So questions like, ask yourself, where was I strong in law school? And write down those areas. And then also ask yourself, where did I really struggle in law school? Regardless of the grade that you ultimately got, this is a personal question about where you were strong and where you were not so strong. Next, you want to ask yourself, how much effort did I really put into law school? Was it a situation where I figured out what they wanted and I played the game really well? Or did I give law school everything I had? Next question. How did I study in law school? What was successful? Did I use note cards or? This is a very important question going into bar study because you will be doing that which you did, which served you well in law school, every single day for 10 weeks during bar study. So if you use note cards and they were effective, then you want to commit today to using note cards through bar study. If you use outlines and they were effective, then you want to commit to doing those during bar study. You also want to ask yourself questions like, when does my brain turn off and when is my brain's peak performance time? Because based on those answers to those, that's when you want to be studying the hardest. For me, my brain shut off at 10 o'clock. So I didn't study after 10 p.m. There's no need to pull all-nighters if your brain is not on its peak performing level. So ask that question, and that'll also get you to start thinking about getting more sleep. And then you want to move into some of the more personal questions. who and what are my anxiety triggers, right? Because what you want to do now in getting these ducks in a row is to eliminate as many anxiety triggers as you possibly can. One easy way to do it, if the anxiety triggers are connected to people, is to let them know, hey, I love you, but I'm not going to be available to you until August 1st. You can put that stamp on your email. You can put that on your voicemail. And hopefully that will keep some people at bay who, you know, when you talk to them, you feel a little bit worse about life than you did before you started the conversation. Those are the type of situations you want to take control of now. And the last question is you want to ask yourself, am I 100% committed to passing the bar exam the first time? If the answer is I'm not sure, or I don't know, or I'm just exam as a diagnostic to see what it's like, I don't think you should take the bar exam this time. This exam is for people who are totally and unequivocally committed to passing the first time. And I hope that's who I'm speaking to today. All right, so let's look at another reality of the bar exam. And that is what have become known as risk factors. The factors that have been studied to show who struggles with passing the bar exam the first time. Now, one of the teasers we sent out was, what is the most outcome determinative risk factor? And it is that one right in the middle, which represents graduating law school with a GPA of 2.6 or below. The stats are this: if you graduate law school above a 2.6, the average passage rate is anywhere from 80 to 83%. For students that graduate law school below a 2.6, that stat has been proven to be right around 32, 33%. So if that is you, number one, it doesn't mean that you won't pass the bar exam. When I look at risk factors, I call them multipliers. Everybody who sits for the bar exam has a risk factor that has their name on it. All that means is that's how much more harder you have to study during the bar exam. I've worked with students who graduated with a 2.3 and they passed the bar exam because they committed to doing everything that they had to do to pass the bar exam the first time. And now they're wonderful attorneys who I would actually trust with my legal issues. So take these into consideration, but don't see them as risk factors or walls. See them as opportunities and multipliers, and you will pass the first time. All right, because your goal as you study is to slay each one of those risk factors that has your name on it, and you can do it. How do you do it? Well, I'm glad you asked. First, you have to positively affirm yourself. So here's a positive affirmation right here, and I'm sure it applies to you. I've overcome tough things before. I can do it again. That's a true statement, and these are the types of affirmations that you're going to have to hold on to as you move through the study season. So since we're in advance and we're working well in advance of what's to come, let's take a look into the future, but not like this, not afraid. We want to take a look into the future more in this posture, where we're armed with what we need, where we're stepping back, standing straight, standing tall, ready to take on whatever comes. So the first step is to really look at the differences between law school study and bar exam study. And these are just some examples. It's fast-paced. Some of you have said that these presentations today are fast-paced. They're kind of by design that way because bar study is very fast-paced. And this is a situation you will be learning, practicing, and mastering a new skill set all at the same time. And trust me, you can do it. And then lastly, the environment's going to be a little bit different. Law schools try to keep you happy. They want the environment to be pleasant. The bar exam can, for some of us, be quite the opposite. And so you want to be prepared for that reality. Chrissy talked about a schedule and this daily schedule. I just like to throw this slide up. This is what it looks like in chart form, what it can look. And this represents about a 50 to 55 hour study week. And you'll see there's a lot of me time there. So you won't still be able to have some semblance of a life, but you do have to dedicate as much time as possible to real focused study. All right, so let's go through some specific action steps that you need to start looking at right now. So the first set is what I call doing the life pre-work. And this is what you can start doing right now. The first thing you want to do is identify who and what you are responsible for, right? Your pets, your children, your spouse, and you want to make sure you have a plan of action for how you're going to take care of them in advance, and start doing that now. So one thing you can do is call a family meeting with all of the key players in your family. And you might have to let some people down with some realities, because maybe this year you might not be able to attend the family reunion, right? You might not be able to go on that summer vacation that you always go on because you'll be studying. And you want to paint a picture to your loved ones of what supporting you during this season might actually look like. So if you have children, what would be most helpful is to set up a schedule with those who want to help out with the kids. Something like, hey, Mom, on Thursdays, if you were to pick the kids up from camp and get them dinner, that would be so helpful to know that I can count on you every Thursday to do that, right? Because if you don't let people know early how they can support you, their support can actually serve as a distraction. So that's one aspect of life pre-work. So this speaks to the what you're responsible for. I have suggested to some students to go ahead and prepay bills, car note, rent for the 2 months of bar study, just so that you don't forget. And I ask people to scrub their schedules. Just remove those reminders of things that you normally would go to, meetings, functions, so that you're not even tempted to go, and so that you don't feel bad that you're not attending. And then also, if you have a vehicle, go ahead and get the scheduled maintenance done now, so that you don't have to worry about driving back and forth to class or driving to the actual bar exam. So those are things that you can start doing today. And I really implore you to do them today. And so the other thing we've already spoken about was doing your bar course pre-work. You can start doing that now. And then this moves into getting physically prepared. So you might be thinking, all I'll be doing is sitting down and studying. How taxing can that be? Very taxing. So these are asanas, positions for yogis, that you can just start implementing and doing today. Moving your body is the key, because stretching and moving your body gets rid of stale air in the lungs and stale thoughts in the brain. And so if you can't do the asanas, just simply twisting your body as you get up in the morning and then before you go to bed at night. It really matters. One of the other teasers we sent out was, how can you increase your practice scores by about 20%? Well, here's the answer. This is a study that was done at the University of Illinois that looked at students preparing for the same final exam. Half of the students sat quietly right before they took the exam. The other half took a 20-minute walk before the exam. And what they found was the students who walked around had a lot more brain activity. They further looked at the test scores for the students in both groups. And the students who moved around before the exam scored better on the bar exam. Now, I've been coined as creating the Find a Partner and Study Stroll, and I give this as my gift to you. There will be people who want to be a part of this journey with you. The Study Stroll is a great way to do that. All you do is take a subject of your study materials, let's say contracts for instance, and you find a loved one and you say, let's go for a walk. You're killing a couple birds with one stone. Number one, you're getting some fresh air. 2, you're moving your body. And 3, you're teaching someone the law, thereby solidifying the rules of law in your own brain. It works every time, and that's probably my greatest gift to you. In the essence of time, I'm going to move on to some physical aspects, things that you can do starting today. I like to throw this slide up. If we haven't scared you enough, this is really expensive. And so if you're committing to doing this the first time, just look at how much it's costing you. And if you take it again, then you have to pay for this all over again. So take this as seriously as you possibly can and do everything that you can now to pass the bar the first time. So we're going to move through a few of these slides, but these again are things that you can start doing today. Number one, start eating consciously. Every chance you get, start weaving brain food into your diet. The general rule of thumb is the darker and the more richly colored the food and more closely in its natural state, the better it is for your brain. Weave those in at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It will make a difference. You want to continue or start moving your body. You don't have to join a gym. Walking is perfect and it's free. You want to add those breathing techniques throughout your bar study, and you want to start drinking more water and even green tea for the antioxidants. We talked about the importance of sleep once, but one more note about sleep. Sleep is the only time that your brain processes information and categorizes it and puts it into your memory bank. If you don't get proper sleep, that important aspect of your studying doesn't happen. So I suggest choose a bedtime and stick with it all through bar study. For me, once I realized my brain shut off at 10 p.m., 10 p.m. became my bedtime. And so please do yourself a favor and get sleep. You also want to moderate your caffeine. If you're one of my coffee junkies who needs a cup at 8 o'clock in the morning and another cup at 10:30 to get through the morning, understand that for the bar exam, you will not get coffee breaks. So start to wean yourself off of coffee. So this is a beautiful time of your life, and it can be scary. But the beauty of bar study is that your steps are ordered. Many times in your life, you'll be faced with difficult situations. You won't have a road map, you won't have a schedule, and you won't have support. Bar study is very different from those times. You'll have a daily schedule. You'll have tons of support, whether you want it or not, and you will know what's expected of you each and every day. See that as the positive source that it is. Use it to your advantage, and do everything you can to stay peace-filled, grateful, and mindful as you walk through the next step of your journey. Thank you, and namaste.
Thank you so much for that presentation and giving us information on how to survive this crazy season. Now what we're going to do is open it up for questions. If you have questions, you can go ahead. There's a little Q&A bottom on your Zoom window, and you can go ahead and type the questions. We've answered some questions through text throughout the presentation, but any question that comes in now, we can go ahead and answer it live. So we'll give everyone who's participating now just a few minutes to write any questions if they have any. So it looks like we don't have tons of questions. So what we'll do is we have our contact information. If you do come up with some questions after, feel free to email any of us. We'll also send the video out with the link. So if you want to review it again and some questions come up later, you're always welcome to contact us because we want to be a support system for all of you. I want to turn it over to the other panelists to see, oh wait, we do have some questions.
Yes.
Okay, so our first question is, when is the ETA for us to receive our bar mentor? So once we get all the applications in tomorrow, it'll probably take us a few weeks in April to get the bar mentors together. So we're hoping by sometime the beginning of May, mid-May, that we'll be able to pair you up so you guys can talk before bar prep starts. So that's the timeline now. It just depends on what the schedule looks like and how many people apply. But we're looking at May being kind of the launch date for everyone to start pairing up with their mentors. We also have another question that says, do you have any suggestions for students working full-time? So I'll let one of the, yeah, yes. Go ahead.
So I find people who have to work are really specific and intentional about how they use their time. So step number one is create a schedule that actually works within the confines of the time that you have. And when you have set time aside to study, make sure that's all you're doing. So you're turning off cell phones, taking off your iWatch, your Apple Watch, everything that can serve as a distraction needs to be away from you. Talk to your employer also. I strongly suggest that you at least get the month of July off, and at the very least, the 2 weeks before the bar exam. Hopefully they will allow you to not work so that you can spend every waking minute that you have studying and solidifying the rules. Anyone
I'm
else?
going to chime in, and I'm probably not going to be as nice. You know, in my experience working very closely with students who take the bar, students who work full-time really struggle a lot, and often do not pass the bar, because if you think about all the work that has to be done, and most students who do well the first time will tell you that they spend 10 to 11 hours just focusing on the bar review, the practicing. Realistically, I understand that there's a balance that some individuals have to make, but consider all the time and effort that you put in, all the money that you're spending to take that exam. And if you're cutting into because you're saying working full time means that by the time you get home, between traveling and the like, you're already utilizing 9-10 hours of your day. Mm-hmm. So realistically, how much time you have, I think it's a serious, I think it might affect you in some way. I just want you to think of it. I mean, I want to be as honest as I can because I work with so many students, and that's my take.
What I've done with students who've worked full-time as well is we put them, no one that I worked with full-time continues to work full-time in the summer. They at least get a modified part-time schedule, and then they take at least the month or the 2 weeks off, like she mentioned, right? So I definitely think you should do that. But the other thing that I have a lot of my full-time working students do is they start studying now. So they study all of April and all of May, so that they can work part-time in the May, June, July season. So if that's you, I think at most it's part-time working and having a very modified schedule, and then starting your studying now if you can't get the time off that you need, but you should really push to get the time off that last month in July, or at least those 2 weeks at the least. If not, I think it's gonna be hard. Yeah. So let's see, we have more questions. I am not a fast reader and typist, so the MPT makes me nervous. Do you have any suggestions?
I think the more you practice a multi-state performance test, the more you realize that it's not as difficult as people think it is. It's a matter of really just managing your data and the materials. But the more you look at exams under exam conditions, the more you realize that it's really a very doable exam. So you have to practice. You have to read as many MPTs as you can. I usually suggest to my students between now and exam time, once maybe comes around, I would say do maybe 7 or 8, which is about 1 a week. That's a lot. Try different ones, but then do it under exam conditions, and then look back at the exam, look at the sample answers, and have a full understanding of what they were asking you to do. And I think if you do them under exam conditions and you begin to review the answers, what you could have done differently, I think you begin to get into a pattern of realizing these are not as hard as you think they are, right? They're just not that hard. They're not asking you to incorporate all these cases. Looking at the point sheets, which are the examiner's grading sheets, or an answer sheet, I think you will realize that they're just not that hard, and you probably can get a handle the more you look at them.
And what you want to think about some people who do struggle with the typing is they do actual typing exercises. Like there's a typing maniac that you can play on Facebook that maybe they do 10 minutes a day, or they start now so that their typing gets a little bit faster in May. The other thing that people who aren't strong typers do is they outline by hand. So then they actually do a hand outline of everything they want to talk about before they start actually typing. So then when you actually type, you're being very, I guess, focused, or you're very focused and efficient on what you're actually typing out because you've pre-planned it. And then a lot of it is going into the file and the library and having a system. So in the library where you're looking at cases, you only really need 3 things. You need to know what the key facts were, the holding, and the rules. So if you have a good system, a good highlighting system, a good notation system, you're only looking for those 3 things. So if you're a slower reader, you're actively reading, looking for those 3 things. You're not just reading the case just to read it. So you should go into the MPT looking for the rules, how you're going to use them, and when you go into the fact file, figuring out, well, what facts can I now match with the rule? So if you're a slower reader, I usually recommend starting with the library first, because you always know exactly what you're looking for, and it makes you faster than starting with the fact file, which you don't know what you're looking for, so you're going to have to go back and read it twice. And if you're already a slow reader, you don't have time for that. And that's where if you outline by hand, then it also speeds you up later when you don't have to take so much time to actually type. And that, I think, if you can practice that with the 7 or 8 PTs, that would be really helpful for you, so you get a good system down before you take the actual exam. So
also, I just real quick, I just want to say, in some jurisdictions, like in Texas, you can actually write the MPT.
Yeah,
So if you're really uncomfortable with typing, I mean, our students have the choice to either type some portions of the exam or write others. And many of my students do not type the MPT, they write them. The only thing I would say about that is this: if you're going to write the MPT, and you should know that because you'll know whether your jurisdiction allows you to do that or not, then practice in the method that you will be using the day of the exam. If you're going to type because your jurisdiction doesn't allow you to write, then practice typing. But otherwise, there may be a choice for you.
So the next question we have is, should we try and do an activity like working out, or should every free moment be designated to bar study, with the exception of a 20-minute stroll? I think that's for you. Yeah.
Great question. You have to move your body. You'll start to wonder, why am I so tired? And all I'm doing is sitting down studying. The level that you're doing is so incredibly taxing on your entire body that if you don't move, you'll burn out. So I went to the gym, but I always I'll put it to you like this: I was in the best possible physical shape I've ever been in my adult life when I went to sit for the bar exam, because I had my workout for once in my life scheduled, and I did not miss one gym day because it was a part of my everyday. It was like Groundhog's Day, that movie where every day seemed exactly the same. That's what I was for all 10 weeks. I ate the same thing. I studied in the same place. I moved around a little bit, but my gym was a part of that because I needed a moment to decompress. You can't look at your books every waking minute. You'll burn out. And this is one of those times where you really will learn yourself. You'll learn when your brain shuts off. You'll learn your breaking point when you push yourself to the point where you're like, that's kind of too far. And so that's why it is a beautiful time in life, because everything you're doing is for yourself. And it may be the last time you'll ever be able to do something so selfish, but learn what you probably have never learned about yourself through this process. But absolutely move your body. And the study stroll gives you a chance to move your body and also stay connected with people who love you, because that's equally important.
And for some people who do the workout like they need it, but then they have high anxiety where they need the workout, but their anxiety is so high that they feel they can't work out because they have to do work. One suggestion I've given is just all the bar companies have the lectures online. Just listen to it while you work out, right? Yeah. So you don't feel guilty and you still get your workout. And that's one method that has really helped people, is just listening to stuff so you feel like you're studying. But then if you don't really get that workout or that feeling that you need to, like, oh, I took a break, then I definitely don't think you should do any bar prep work at all when you exercise. It just really depends on you, right?
I actually chime in very quickly. You know what Tanea said about eating healthy, it really is important. When I was teaching, I think, Barbary, there would be tables filled with donuts every morning. And these students would just, and honestly, it's not good. It just isn't good. I mean, I know that you rely on food when you're nervous about things, but it was the students that were eating the fruit and walking around, they seemed a lot more alert. And I really do think all these things matter when you are engaging in a 2-month study period. Everything matters like that.
I have to add this, because I did mention that I ate the same thing every day. I'm also like a master budgeter as well. So here's an idea of what I ate every single day. I had green tea, water, for breakfast, peanut butter on whole wheat for lunch or snack. I had a bag of some sort of nuts, some strawberries in a bag. And I was a Walmart girl, so I wasn't like going to Whole Foods. I just didn't have that in the budget. But I literally ate that every day. When I took the North Carolina bar exam, my law school catered lunch in. And I was like, I'm not taking any chances. I've trained my body to perform well with what I've been eating for 10 weeks. So even during the bar exam, I took the same food that I'd been eating for 10 weeks. My body was such a well-oiled machine. And I know that contributed to me passing 2 back-to-back bar exams. So eating matters.
And so I'm going to mark that as answered live. I accidentally marked one of the questions as answered live, so I'm going to jump around really quick in the queue. It was, where can I go to get practice MPT questions? Usually you're going to get that from your bar prep company. Sometimes the actual state bar websites will also have the MPT questions. So like California has the past 5 years of performance test questions that you can access, but usually it will come from your bar prep company.
But also don't forget the national conference has a bunch of them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so,
also your ASP program might release them in their program. So if you participate in the resources we talked about in the second part of the presentation, you will get tons of MPT questions that you can practice. The next question is Ms. Anna Antero. This question is related to your presentation regarding the breakdown of the MBE subject matter outline. Would you happen to know if the the adaptive bar program reflects the percentage of the subject matter questions tested on the bar?
I'll let Chrissy help me with that as well, but
Yes.
I believe that every commercial review, because I've taught for Kaplan and Barbary, they're all very mindful of what the subject matter outlines of focus are. So for example, we have an ABR course, an advanced bar review course in my school taught by Kaplan, and they teach only the heavily tested portions of the subject matters. So I'm pretty sure that all the courses do that as well.
And so what it does is they have lots of questions. There are, for example, more negligence questions that you can do in the adaptive bar program and less, I don't know, riparian water right questions. Like there might be 1 or 2 because it never shows up, but there's going to be 20 to 40 negligence questions. So it doesn't reflect it exactly, but it does give you more of the questions that tend to show up more based on the subject matter outlines, right? And the bar purposely releases questions like that. So you can't really go wrong in that sense. Hopefully that answered your question. The next question we have is, during law school, I studied alone. Do I need to study with a classmate for the bar?
Oh, that's another good question. The greatest rule of thumb is what worked for you in law school, continue that, and even more so during bar study. But there is a real aspect of bar study that is not a part of law school, and that's the feeling of isolation. Because I've watched students kind of siphon themselves off, and at different points in my career when I was teaching, we would have to go extract them from the cocoon that they've created because we were worried, and what we found was a student that really wasn't doing well. So it is important to engage with people who make you feel better than you did before you were around them. Does it have to be a student? Do you have to be talking about the rules with someone else that's also studying for the bar exam? You don't have to. This is where you really get to do what works for you. I tell you, it's the last time you'll be able to be this selfish as an adult in your life. So use it to your advantage. So if you have a student, a fellow classmate, you vibe well, you feel better and stronger after you're with them than before, then yes. But if you don't have that person at your law school, then let someone else fulfill that space and you study the way you studied through law school. The goal is to not really isolate yourself. You can go mad if you are in this all by yourself. And that goes for the practice of law too. So if you can connect with people who make you feel good about life and hope-filled and peace-filled, you're going to need them throughout the rest of your life. And bar study is no different.
I actually am a lone studier. I never studied with anyone in law school because am introverted. So when I studied for the bar, I had one classmate who went to a different school. We never actually talked about the bar, and we didn't even actually meet in person. We just webcammed with each other and put each other on mute. So there's still some sort of interaction. And then my boyfriend at the time was in dental school, and he was studying for his boards. So we would do the same thing. So it's not necessarily that you have to group study, but I do agree that you need some sort of human interaction or you're going to go crazy. What type of human interaction is really up to you to decide what makes you comfortable or not comfortable.
Yeah.
The next question we have is, I get very anxious the day before an exam, and I don't normally have a good night of sleep. Any recommendations? I'll let you guys take that one.
Well, I'm a yogi.
Yeah, so I thought you'd be great to answer the question.
And the beauty of the internet, we didn't even always have access like this. You can find a PM yoga, deep breathing, nighttime little video tutorial that you can go through. I highly recommend that. Also, if you've been using the 10 weeks to train yourself on when it's bedtime, when it's time to actually sleep, when it's time to move around, you'd be surprised how your brain and your body will have muscle memory. And even though it is the day before the exam, if you've trained it for 10 weeks that now 10 o'clock means sleep, you will start to power down in a way that you might not be able to do now. So train the body, weave in the deep breathing exercises. It really, really works. Before every trial, before every time I walk into the courthouse, I am breathing my way into that building. And every time, if I miss that step, I have a different outcome personally. I may win the case, the client may still be happy, but I don't feel as good on the inside if I skip that step. So the deep breathing, meditation, talking to someone who you know loves you, I think is important. Not anyone that you're wondering how they feel about you, but you should have at least one person that you are for sure you know they love you. Talk to that person the night before. And God has been a moving force in my life. Prayer worked for me. And if it never worked for you, if you never tried it, this might be a time to even give that a try. But there are absolutely things to do, but use the internet for some deep breathing and meditation and PM yoga.
I've also done something
where
they
have apps now for meditation, right? Sorry, Chrissy, I didn't.
You can add
person. I was just going to say they have apps now for meditations that, I mean, I had a student who really struggled with exam taking techniques, and I told her about the app and it worked for her. And they're just like 5-minute apps. And meditation, by the way, guys, I really agree. It's really a very powerful tool because it settles your brain. It allows you to be grounded. It's not silly stuff. It's proven stuff. So there's lots of apps that you guys can start practicing with, and maybe do it every day a little bit, and eventually it all really comes up. Sorry, Chrissy.
Oh, no problem. I was going to add, because I'm a pretty anxious person too, and for me, the sleep thing was sometimes difficult because I get really restless. So what I tended to do sometimes is, because even for me, meditation my anxious levels are so high that my meditation still doesn't bring it down enough. Where what I would do is I would sleep really early and I would wake up early the next day to study. So what happens is that sleeping early and knowing that I had the 2 to 3 hours to study before the actual exam started made it easier for me to sleep, because I knew, I have time just before the exam, even though that's not the best way to do it because it feels like cramming. It helped me actually deep sleep for those 6 hours because I knew I was going to wake up and be able to really just go hard just before the exam. And that works for me, but I've been doing that since undergrad. So that's just my system of how it worked for me. If that's not how you function, I would not do that at all. Or you have to kind of test it to make sure that, what you do works for you, because everybody is just so different, right? For subjects we haven't taken a class for, do you recommend open book practice question as a study tactic? I'm taking the Texas Bar for essays and certain topics I don't have full exposure to. My answer to that would be yes in the beginning. I would do an open book, because if not, you're gonna practice the law incorrectly, and you're gonna memorize the law incorrectly, and it's not gonna be the best use of your time. So I would do them open book until you get more comfortable, and then start doing closed book time exams. I'm not sure if you all agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, I agree, but still the goal is to get the law under your belt. And because I'm in Texas and I teach the Texas bar, feel free to email me. And I may have some other tips for you as well that you may want to, that I may share with you then.
Yeah. And so that's where it's kind of personal for me. I always did an open book because I get too anxious to do it closed book and then I feel stressed. So the more I do it open book, it's an extra retention point for my memorization. And then eventually it's the same question over and over again. I don't even need to look at the law anymore, right? Can you please go over the breakdown?
One other thing to add for that one is a part of the process is trusting the process. I went into North Carolina having not taken family law, and everyone said family law is all over the bar exam in North Carolina, and it was. But I trusted the bar review course. I watched the lectures. I took the notes. I practiced well. When some of that me time that was on my study schedule, I dedicated it to family law, and I had to really just trust that what I was getting from bar review was what I needed for the bar exam, and it was. So trusting the course and the process also will help to bring down the anxiety.
The next question we have is, can you please go over the breakdown of the bar regarding which component of the bar is paper-only exam answers versus when we can use our laptop? And I think we also got a question about it because when I mentioned that it's still paper, I think it was a little confusing. And so what is paper is the questions. You get a packet with all the questions. The multiple choice questions are paper, the essay questions are paper, the file, the library is all paper, but then you type your answers in the computer like a laptop. So it's just like law school. We haven't got to the point where you look at the questions on a computer and then click A, B, C, and D like they do for like medical. The questions are given to you. And so you can sign up to take it electronically through a laptop, or you can even handwrite them. But for the MBE, you don't actually even input it in a computer system. They still use Scantrons. So the essay and the PT portion are going to go through ExamSoft, and then the MBE portion is going to go through a Scantron, but everything is all the questions are paper. So hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, and I just remember that some jurisdictions allow both. I don't know that there's any that doesn't. I know in Texas, you have to make the choice. Do I want to type or do I want to write? But you have to do it ahead of time because they have to give you the software to upload into your computer.
And the location is different, but all the questions are still going to be on paper. It's just whether you want to type or write out the essay question and the written portion, you'll be at a different location depending on what you select. Yeah. We have, can you mention your meal plan again? I think this was your daily meal plan. Yes.
Yes. I ate the same thing every day for 10 weeks. I was robotic in that sense. And I chose foods that were brain foods. My mom's a nutritionist, so I had some backstory information about what it was. I did a Google search. I found the foods. I looked for the cheapest ones, and that's what I ate every single day. So it was, I stayed hydrated. Sleep deprivation and dehydration manifest the same way. You can't remember anything. You feel like you're in a fog and you don't have energy. So that was something I could control. Went to sleep, drank a lot of water. I had a boiled egg every morning for breakfast, peanut butter and jelly on whole wheat every day for lunch. I had a bag of nuts, strawberries, and blackberries and blueberries in a bag. And for dinner, if I could find some salmon on sale, I would broil that. Some very lean turkey or chicken. But I had to get that protein in also because it's a brain food. So Google the best brain foods and look for ones that fit in your budget. I did not eat any fast food whatsoever because I thought about the foods that made me feel tired or made my stomach hurt after I ate them, and I didn't have time to be tired and any pain, and I just steered clear of all of those. My skin was clearer, my body was great, it's the best weight ever. I was really proud of myself on a lot of levels during bar study. And if I'm coming to your school, I'll share more of my study. But during my North Carolina bar study period, I was going through a very difficult divorce. And I had 2 teenagery children at home too that were literally going through a divorce and making life difficult as well. But we all got through that bar exam together. And I had to be intentional with every single thing that I did, every minute of the day. And so I love working with repeaters and older students or students with children because there are some things that you have to do early on, and then you have to recommit to doing them every single day. But what I put in my body, I thought if I don't show up 100%, it doesn't matter how much I study. I've got to be strong for this. And that's where the food really position. It didn't even make sense for me to study if I couldn't focus, retain, and sleep, and then regurgitate and recall.
And so I want to make sure I'm respectful of people's time. So those of you who are still on the call, we did say till 12:30. So if you have to go, definitely feel free to go. But I wanted to see if our panelists, we still have 2 more questions in the queue. I'm willing to stay and answer those 2 questions live. But I did want people to know who are on the call that you can go ahead and sign off if you have other things to do. But we're going to go ahead and finish the questions since we have the time, if that's okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question we have is, do you recommend going to religious services during bar study? For me, I think that's a personal choice. I think, yes, I'm very religious, so I go to mass when I need to. That's helpful. It's just part of my study schedule. But did I go every single week during the bar prep season? No, there's some days where I didn't go because I was just too stressed out. So it's really up to you on where you get your power or your, I guess, peace of mind from. That's kind of where I say.
For me, I had a schedule. Church was on the schedule. I even went to communion, which I think was then Thursday nights. But it was all a part of my master schedule that I had put together probably right around this time, like the March before I graduated. And I knew I needed my tanks filled. And bar study is not really a tank filler. It is a tank depleter. So spending time with family and going to church was like going to the gas station for me.
And so our last question is, how do we know when we are on the verge of burnout? I'm concerned that I never stop studying because I tend to have high anxiety. I'm not a yogi, but I do work out. My anxiety is largely in part due to the pressure to perform.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll take the first shot at it, and then I think a lot of people have stuff to chime in because I am a high anxiety person and I study to the point where I burn out. So my actual summer schedule, which I don't think was the best, to be honest, was I would study 10 to 14 hours a day. And then I crashed about 3 to 4 times where I just couldn't do it anymore. And I just took a whole day off. And so for me, that worked because I would still get the amount of work in and I wouldn't be able to go eat dinner with someone every day and not feel anxious. It wasn't who I was. I would need to get to the point where I'd burned out already, and then I would be able to take the time off, which I don't think is the most healthiest. So if you can find a way to figure out, well, I'm on the verge of burnout, what is something that I'm comfortable doing that will lower my anxiety where I can still enjoy myself and not be studying, I think would be really useful. Or have a good system where it's like, when I do burn out, which will happen, especially if you have high anxiety, it's going to be hard to avoid it. What is the process? So my process is, well, I'm burned out. I'm going to go get California Pizza Kitchen, watch a movie on Netflix, and then eat a cupcake. And then after that, go hang out with my boyfriend. And then now I feel like I can study again. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's kind of my perspective, also being not a yogi person. That's kind of how I did it, but I'm sure that the other panelists have much better advice on how to handle that type of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully this will help you. I think I'm a naturally calm person on the outside, but on the inside, bar review, it took me to I didn't know existed because I've overcome a lot of things in my life. And I thought, oh, this is the test, right? And I've got 10 weeks to study for it. I'll be fine. But that wasn't the case. So I want to empower you and free you to think that just because you see other bar studiers and they look really, really calm, trust me, on the inside, they are struggling from one week to the next. So for me to get to push myself past those moments, because I felt them, it was a shutting down type of feeling. I would get headaches and I don't ever really get sick. So that's when I knew, okay, you need to pump the brakes. You need to take a break. I realized the importance. It was a mentor of mine that said the 4th of July weekend is your weekend. And she told me that like in January. And I'm like, what does that mean? But yeah, that was the day I knew I had done everything I could do up to that point. I scheduled time with friends. we went to go see Jazzy Jeff, who was like the best DJ ever, and watch fireworks. And it got me out of that space of I can't do this anymore to, wow, I've earned the right to do this. I didn't think about bar study at all that weekend. And I came back and hit it hard when you really have to, that last push to get everything in and well organized in your brain. But everyone feels that point, from the calmest person to the high anxiety person. Bar review will take you to that place that you really weren't quite prepared for. And when you feel it, have some go-to stuff. The affirmations, put them on Post-it notes on your mirror. I had a picture of my grandparents always in view because they're like my role models and idols for life, and they've both passed away. But those were things that could instantly ground me. Seeing a positive affirmation or seeing Lillian Moses helped me tremendously. But it was also recognizing everyone was feeling something that they'd never felt before who was studying for that bar exam. So you're not alone, is really what I'm trying to say. And have some things there that bring you joy now and keep them close to you when you study.
You know, I often talk to students. This year we will be graduating around 180 students. When they finish studying for the bar, I bring them in the fall, a panel of those students to speak to my students who are now going to be taking the next year bar exam. And, you know, I hear all the comments that they have to say, and most of them say things like, I studied, I had a calendar, I knew what I was doing, I felt very comfortable with what I was doing. And then if I felt like I couldn't assimilate anything else, then I would create incentives. And the calendar that Tanea put on the screen is an example of that, right? If you know that Saturday you're going to go to a movie, you're going to stop at 3, but you've worked really hard the other 6 days, you should be very proud of what you've done, and you should create incentives.
Yeah.
And then keep in mind, it is a bar exam. We've all done it. You will do it. Everybody else who comes behind you will do it. That's why we have thousands of lawyers. So it's a matter of really doing it strategically, giving yourself the permission to have downtime during that period of time, but also knowing that there's some real serious time that you have to devote to studying. And you're going to go into that bar exam feeling so confident because you've done it all, and you're almost going to be saying, come on, bring it. I want that day to come around. Mm-hmm. And it's just a matter of thinking about it.
All right. So I think we've answered all the questions. Again, if you have more questions that come up after, after reflecting on it or reviewing the PowerPoints when we send out the video link, feel free to email us or just drop us an email, or you can also talk to Cassandra or Linda too. Do we have anything we want to add before we sign off and say thank you to everyone for coming? Good luck on finals. And good luck on the bar prep season. Hopefully we'll still be in touch throughout the summer if you can join the bar mentoring program and participate in all the CLEO programs.
We might have another question in there. Do we?
You can send your emails. My email is on the is on the actual slides, so you can go ahead, and mine is already there. I think the two of you can decide if you want to share the email through.
Absolutely. And if I can do it, you can do it.
So we definitely will. Mine is available. You have to send me the application anyway, so my CLEO email is there. Any other questions? All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great weekend. Again, if you have more questions, just let us know. Thanks again to our panelists and for all the students that attended.
Wonderful seeing you guys. Great. Good luck to all of your exams. Bye-bye.
Bye.